Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jordan Small, Executive Director here at the NZ US Council. Today we're back to US politics as we count down to polling day, now just 11 days out. To take us through it all, where the race stands today and what we should expect over the next couple of weeks, I'm joined by Kenny Clark, a regular partner at Lillis Clark, a Wellington public affairs firm.
G'day, how's it going?
Good, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good. And of course, Leon Grice, Chair of the Council, regular on the show. Welcome, Leon.
G'day.
Keen to get your quick views. So Jacinda Ardern's crushing and historic victory, her Labour Party able to govern alone. National, the other major New Zealand party, having sunk to 27% of the vote, leaky, demoralised. Previously safe national seats lost to Jacinda's red wave. Kenny, what's the message the electorate is delivering to Labour? And then we'll look at national. Have they been given a clear mandate to get some things done?
Well, I think they've been given a very clear mandate to carry on what's been happening this year. It's comprehensive, as you say, and a fairly nationwide phenomenon. So you're right, there have been provincial and rural seats that National has traditionally held that have gone to Labour. And I think the overriding issue of the campaign has been coronavirus and the government's response to it. So I think a lot of 2018 and 2019 sort of got written off, and it really came down to a referendum on the Prime Minister and the government's handling of both the health crisis and the economic crisis. And I think people effectively said that the job was well done, that they had confidence in the government to carry on managing, the border, the economic stimulus and support, and faced with a choice between the proven competence of the government over the last, 9 months, versus what the opposition was offering, which was reasonably frequent changes of leader, which came with changes of messaging, which, as you say, came with leaks and disorganisation. That was just not something that people wanted to adopt partway through a very significant health and economic crisis. So the electorate has said, yep, Labour, you've done a good job, please carry on. I would be cautious reading into that too much of a mandate for sort of, centre-left or left-wing policy change. Jacinda Ardern obviously went to the 2017 campaign promising transformational change, and that's sort of become a bit of a buzzword. And a few critics have held her to account, saying, well, what exactly about the last term of government has been transformational? I don't think the overwhelming victory on Saturday night was a call for more of that. Definitely some of those voters would have been wanting transformational change, but I think a lot of them were just wanting the stability that they've seen over the last 9 months to continue.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Leon?
Not really. I got three things that really add to that rather than, have a different perspective. I think, Kenny's hit it on the nail. The public support what the government's done and want it to continue. But, in parts of my family that have voted national since the 15th century, they for the first time, they were telling me that they voted for the national electorate candidate, but for the ACT party. And then further south in the South Island, so I had a report from a prominent South Island mayor that farmers were voting for Labour to get them across the line where they didn't need the Greens to govern because they're just so opposed to the Greens. And so I think people started voting strategically, given, and also I think the constant leaks and ill discipline of National over those 3 years meant it put all those sorts of strategies in play. And then the third thing is I think that the New Zealand Herald cartoonist a couple of days ago got it right had a cartoon which featured the silverware at the last National Party caucus. And of course, they have to hand out a lot of silver plates. But instead of silver plates, it had silver knives. So I thought that really captured it quite well.
So you say, no mandate for transformational change. They've got a clear majority. When does a party ever have a mandate? If it's not now.
When they campaign on it. And Jacinda Ardern has been extremely careful to say that she will govern for all New Zealanders, and that she hasn't necessarily said this out loud, but they want to win again in 2023. And they know as a group that winning in 2023 is about ensuring that the majority of New Zealanders agree and are comfortable with what the government's doing and what their policy platform is. I know there will be a desire by some, and sort of 11 period where John Key and National were really strong. There were plenty of supporters coming out saying, now is your chance, with the global financial crisis and Christchurch earthquakes, now's the chance for radical change. You need to slash taxes and shrink the size of government. And John Key just wasn't having it. That was not what he was about. He had earned the right to govern by the people trusting that he would do what he said he would do. And he said that he would govern in a fairly, incremental and moderate way. And I think that's exactly the same this time around. Jacinda Ardern has got an eye on the next election already, and wants to keep those people. I think she said this on election night. She wants to keep the trust of the people that have voted Labour for the first time.
I was in the 5th of August in a conference in Auckland that I was part of called Auckland Future Now, and it was talking about what are we going to do now that we were back to level 1 before the second outbreak, and John Key and Helen Clark spoke and were keynote speakers at the beginning and the end of the day. And it just struck me at the end of the day, there was 18 years of an absolute competence in terms of two executive leaders. And there were differences between the two, but it was very small. Both leaders that had a very keen eye for where the centre of New Zealand politics was, and that both of them very, very successful premiers.
Yeah, let's pick up on that point of an eye for the centre of New Zealand politics. For National, can they see this in any other way than a massive rejection of their leader and what the party stands for?
I think the election was less about the leader per se and less about the policy program they were offering and more about competence and, just the ability for the public to trust them. And through 2020, they had 3 different leaders. They were messy coups. And
before that, Jamie Lee Ross, and that was hell of a messy, and affairs in the caucus, and that were played out, in the public domain. It was disgraceful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so the public looking at that are like, well, are these the guys that we want in charge of the country if they can't even run themselves properly? And I'm not sure that policy considerations or there just wasn't enough time really to consider the leader, and their sort of personal characteristics just kept changing.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at that other election or elections happening at the moment in the US, elections for president and congressional representation. We're now 10 or 11 days out from polling day, 3rd of November. It's Tuesday. 538 gives Trump a 12 in 100 chance of winning. Not great, but still a chance. Kenny, how would you sum up the race in these final days? What has Trump got to do from here?
I think the 12 in 100 sums it up pretty succinctly. It's a strong likelihood of Biden winning, and for Trump to win, there would have to be something fairly out of this world. There's sort of a bit of a cliche about October surprises. I think we've had a lot of October surprises already. I think there was one week, a couple of weeks ago, where Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. The New York Times did an enormous expose on Trump's tax returns. There was a presidential debate. I'm sure there was something else I can't even remember, but it's been a hectic campaign, and yet all through that, Biden's lead has held fairly solidly. The polls haven't changed that much. The forecasts haven't changed that much. And as the clocks wound down closer and closer to election day, Trump's runway to come up with something is just getting shorter and shorter, and it's less likely to happen. So I think where we are now, a couple of weeks out, is pretty much baked in. That 12 and 100 chance will probably decline even further into single digits. It's not zero, and so you never say never, but it's just extremely unlikely.
Yeah. Leon, what do you think's within Trump's control to turn this around? Certainly hard to discern a strategy. He hasn't had a strategy for the duration of his campaign, just viewing it from a distance. What do you think he can do from here?
Well, I think exactly what he's doing. I think he's doing rally after rally after rally, and damming the torpedoes in terms of the COVID-19 risks. I think he is demonstrating an energy that he had in 2016. I think that will narrow the polls because I think he is such an incredible campaigner and an incredible performer. And so that formula worked, and I think you're starting to see a tightening in the polls a little bit. Where Georgia and Ohio that looked like they were trending Biden are starting to trend back to Trump. Maybe it's too early days, and it's all in the error samples of these polls. So, but apart from Pennsylvania, most of those toss-up polls are within 3 points, and so it is within his ability to reach and close that gap. But Pennsylvania is a 6.4 gap, and that for me is the bulwark of Biden's defense as the polls will narrow. I do remember in 2016, there was they called it sine wave polls because 1 minute Hillary was up as convincingly as Biden was, and the next minute she was down. She was never really seriously behind. She always had a sort of like a 3-point buffer. But then, I remember in the last week, the polls again started to tighten, and that Trump never got into the lead. But there's that last lick in the last few days between the election, that last trend can have a big impact. But overall, the gap just looks too big to at the moment to bridge. But he's campaigning aggressively. He was in Erie, Pennsylvania, campaigning today, and so he knows where he needs to turn things around, and he's very focused on it.
Yeah. You just heard Leon talking about 2016 and Hillary's lead. What do you think's different about Biden's lead this time around?
It's larger. It's more broadly across the map. And just reminiscing about 2016, chances are Biden won't have a New York Times front page cover saying that the FBI is opening an investigation. So he won't have to contend with that. And we were talking earlier as well about Trump's positioning in 2016. He was the outsider, he was the challenger, he was there to shake up the status quo. He was providing hope to people that felt that they were disenfranchised by the system, that he would be an asshole, but he would be on their side. This time around, the obvious issues between coronavirus and the economy, and he's been president for 4 years and is responsible for the response to date. And it's harder for him to take on that naturally combative, challenging role when he's got responsibility for what's been happening.
Yeah. And then one of the differences too is undecideds. Last time around, this year it's estimated somewhere between 2 and 6% undecided voters versus 13% 4 years ago. And that undecided voter is inspiring a certain kind of scorn, which is quite humorous at the moment. I was just reading I think it was a Washington Post article, which quotes David Sedaris, considering the psychology of undecided voter, once envisioned a scenario on an aeroplane where a flight attendant comes through the cabin offering passengers a choice of 2 meals, so chicken or a platter of shit with bits of broken glass in it. And to be an undecided voter, he says, in this election, is to pause for a moment and then ask, how's the chicken cooked? Are they deserving of this kind of scorn?
No, I mean, I think that's sort of slightly unfair. That is a very visual metaphor of a choice. The undecideds will be people who do not follow the news closely, aren't, reading the Washington Post and the New York Times every day. They've got their own lives to live. They've got their own concerns and families to look after. Tangentially, yes, they'll think about politics occasionally, but they're just not following it day to day, week to week. So to them, they'll probably make their minds up closer to election day. But you're right. I mean, you said at the outset that the undecided percentage is a lot smaller than 2016. And the other difference with 2016 was both Clinton and Trump had very high unfavorables. Biden this time around, despite being a career politician and vice president for 8 years, is still not as well known as Clinton. And, we can get into the whys and wherefores of Clinton's unfavourable and what drove that. She was a extremely well-known figure, and a lot of people had made up their minds about her beforehand, whereas that doesn't quite apply the same to Trump. To Biden.
Yeah. Leon, what do you think these undecideds are weighing up?
Well, I don't think that the narrative that Trump was always going to lose the election, is right. I think he had actually a really fighting chance to win the election off an economy that was putting money into people's pockets. In middle-class families, they were rising take-home discretionary income, and the economy was starting to fizz. Now, my Democrat friends will say that was just a continuation of a trend that Obama created after doing all the hard work of the recovery from 2008, and that's fair and that's absolutely true, but he was still going to get credit for a charging economy. So his narrative is that, if it wasn't for this plague from China, you'd be re-electing me and you'd be loving me and suburban women would be loving me and all that sort of thing. I think those undecideds are probably, that they think there's a validity to that argument. They're probably listening to it. Whether or not that'll turn things around, I don't think so. I think one of the problems that he's got at the moment in the last 11 days is that, North Carolina, has got 1,144 new cases today, and it's got a R effective number of 1.65. Pennsylvania, it's got 1,627 new cases today, and it's got an R effective of 1.36. The COVID virus is stalking him in key states that he needs to win. Even Indiana, which he's likely to win, has got the disease is not under control. Ohio, it's not under control in Ohio at the moment. So COVID is a reality for those voters, and they're worried about their families and they're worried what's happening in their communities.
Yeah. If you go, let's go forward to election day, polling day.
By the way, I just do an advertisement. I was referring to the close associate modeler that was developed using a novel numerical method and not statistical analysis, and giving the data on what the COVID-19 rates are in the United States.
And where can you find the latest reports?
Well, it's calculated daily using our algorithm, and at covid19.closeassociate.com, and we provide that data right down to the county level.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Lillis Clark?
Well, no, I'd have to say that's our not-for-profit part of our business.
Okay. No, it's a great resource, highly valuable, and just visually, just very accessible because of the visual component to the graphics, and so very good resource. Check it out, closeassociates.com.
Close associate.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll include that in the notes.
Plural.
Okay. Let's actually the question I wanted to ask before jumping into the presidential debate tomorrow is, if we jump forward to election day, polling day, 3rd of November, what states will you be? What are the 2 or 3 states you're going to be watching really closely on the night?
Do you want me to start with that one?
Yeah.
I think the key state is Florida, which has kind of become a cliche, but for a reason. And despite the changes in the map from 2016 to 2020, it's still one of the key states. And for Trump, it is incredibly hard for him to win without Florida. So if Biden takes Florida, then that pretty much locks out any route Trump would have. So I think that's the number one.
Yeah. For you, Leon?
I agree with Kenny's analysis, but I do know that there's a lot of strategy work going into winning without the need to win Florida in other states. And I know that from the campaign, some people that I know that are working in the campaign, that they want to win Florida and are spending a fortune in Florida at the moment to win it, but they want a strategy that doesn't depend on Florida. The state that I'm be very focused on is North Carolina, because if Tom Tillis gets tipped out, the senator, and North Carolina votes for Biden, and it'll be reporting early North Carolina too, so it'll be a good indicator. If North Carolina goes tips out Tom Tillis in favor of, I'm just trying to remember the name of the candidate, Jamie, forgotten the last name, Jamie Harrison, maybe, I might be wrong. But if Tom Tillis goes and North Carolina looks like it's heading into Biden's camp, that will be, I think, one of the key strategic states for the Democrat campaign.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at the presidential debate tomorrow. 2 quite different approaches to preparation from the candidates. So apparently Biden has been bunkering down with a lot of debate practice. He's got a team there working on it, and then of course we know Trump is just flying around the country, rally after rally. Doesn't seem to be too concerned about preparing for the debate format. What do you think of those approaches, Kenny?
Well, we'll find out tomorrow. But this is we talked earlier about what things Trump has to do to turn this around. The opportunity to get in front of 50, 60, 70 million people watching the debate, plus social media clips afterwards. This is a chance to really reach people that he might not have reached before, get a convincing message out there and try and pull them over the line into his column. So you're at the stage of the campaign now where you're just going to throw a Hail Mary, right? So would meticulous practice benefit him, or would you just fire 1,000 bullets and hope one of them hits, and that's the one that sticks, that's the one that gets replayed, that's the one that goes viral? It's at the point of the campaign where you're not panicking, but you're basically just hoping for a miracle. So, it's Trump style, right? He's not exactly going to turn it around in 2 weeks by reading books for 48 hours.
Yeah. Leon, what difference do you think a good debate performance for Trump could actually make?
Well, a large number of Americans have already voted, so I think that he's now in the first debate could have had a bigger influence. The third debate will have a lot less influence, and the pollsters always say that the first debate is the one that can have the most impact. A good performance also can dissipate after 2 to 3 days. So you'll see a blip in the polls, and in 2 or 3 days it'll go back to trend. I think for me, what will be interesting is whether or not he adopts the same strategy he tried in debate 1, which I think was to try and unnerve Biden to get him to gibber or to become unnerved, as a way of trying to find something that supports their narrative that he's got Alzheimer's and he's no longer got it.
And that was effective in the first half of that debate. I mean, Biden just looked, he looked overwhelmed and just totally unprepared for just that chaos.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but also, how did it look for undecided voters watching Trump? Yep. Yes, Biden did look slightly caught off guard and didn't have an effective response for the first part. And, the moderator was part of that as well. It took the moderator a while to, well, I wouldn't say bring it under control, but, establish the pattern for the debate. But for Trump as well, he came across as extremely aggressive, provocative, inhumane at times, talking about Biden's sons. Yep. So yes,
Biden's response to that was excellent, by the way.
Yeah. So whilst it may have got that, he may have provoked Biden in the way that he was hoping for, it came at a cost to him.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see whether or not he has another crack at that strategy, or whether or not he goes.
Well, there's a mute button this time, is there?
There is a mute button, so it's going to be one where he's going to be left waving his hands in the air if he wants to keep going. But I think he'll be trying to achieve the same thing, but maybe different methods, because I don't think it's going to work a second time.
Yeah. I mean, one of the thoughts I've had around hearing Biden being in camp, getting prepared. He almost, how do you prepare for that kind of chaotic approach from the president? Because he was definitely not prepared. He didn't seem to have a set of responses that he could pull out to expected chaos. It didn't end up like that.
Well, I mean, I don't know how I would have handled it. Like, my ability to think and talk when someone's in my ear, like, I've got 2 young children. It's like, it's really hard. It is off-putting. And to do that in front of, 50 million people where every micro reaction has been judged and analysed, I just couldn't do it. So, yeah, I mean, he wasn't, great, but in the circumstances, far, far better than most people would have handled it.
Yeah, I thought that Kamala Harris was very practiced, and she spent a lot of time practicing saying, without being firm, without being annoying, "I'm speaking, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking," and so that would have been highly practiced. They would have nuanced it and made sure that it didn't come across as negative, or So I think that they'll be looking for devices that keep Biden in the game. That he can practice and make sure that the tone is right, as opposed to talking about the finer points of North Korean détente.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, is having that set of devices, on court.
And they'll be working the refs as well, right? Like the Biden camp will be in the ear of the producers saying, this is how you need to run it. And they'll be making sure that that's to their advantage as much as they can. Obviously, Trump camp will be doing exactly the same. But I think the sort of moral weight will be slightly more on Biden's side, given how much of a departure that first debate was from presidential debate history.
Yeah. I think one of the perhaps one of the disappointing aspects to that debate was the president's attacks on Biden's son, and it's expected he'll double down on those attacks for this debate. Is this really fertile ground for the president, Leon?
No. Yeah, because I think Biden can just say what he did, which is he's my son, he's had problems, I love him, I stand by him. What parent wouldn't respond to that?
That's right. Yeah.
It's a pretty powerful answer.
Oh, absolutely. And Biden turns it into a positive for himself. And, there's still the ultimate problem that Hunter is not on the ticket. So it's not relevant. So it's the same as the attacks on Clinton. That's the last war.
Yeah.
So in terms of key messaging for Biden, 2 key messages that he needs to hammer during the debate:
healthcare, jobs.
Healthcare, jobs.
Simple.
Leon?
Yeah. I'm a centrist. I'm going to bring the country together. I'm not a radical Marxist socialist.
Yeah.
I think he's been given the space by the party. The parties remain unified behind him to do the classic faint left, pivot to the centre, and campaign as a centrist. So I think that what he'll want to do is for the independents is basically say it's not true. I'm not a radical socialist, and I'm not, and AOC does not control me.
And for Trump, what are his key messages going into the final 10 days?
I guess it would just be it'll go back to an element of I'm the only one that can fix this. So I've been in the job, I'm experienced, and then what you're sort of the opposite of what you were just saying before, which is Biden can't be trusted, too radical. He's under the control of outside elements. That's basically it.
I think too. You stick with me. We're all going to get rich.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thank you both for joining me today. So Kenny Clark, partner at Wellington public affairs firm Lillis Clark.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Leon Grice, chair of the council, director at closeassociate.com. And of course my boss.
Just keep that going.
That's right. So that's another episode down. Don't forget to subscribe, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast, and send me an email with any feedback or questions on the episode or podcast. Thanks again. I'm Jordan Small. Join us next time for this NZ US Council Download.